Hi, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us for a couple of minutes. We were just letting lots of people sign in live to listen to us today and making sure that all our lovely speakers were well prepared and ready to go live. So yeah, welcome to the Pioneers webinar this afternoon. Really looking forward to this conversation with Soo Ling Lim and Ben Ford. We had a wonderful prep conversation a few days ago, and I came out of that conversation really buzzing about some of the stuff that we were talking about then. So if this conversation is anything like that, then we're all in for a treat. So today we're talking about how to develop your HR tech strategy, and I'm just going to give Soo Ling and Ben an opportunity to introduce themselves before we get into the juicy stuff. Soo Ling, would you like to go first?
Hi everyone, thanks for joining. So I'm Soo Ling. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Youda. So Youda is a company that's providing a people OS for scale-ups who want to make their culture a source of competitive advantage. So Youda does three things. So first, we hold the people data for your company, and then we provide a no-code platform for people to create user journeys across multiple HR applications. And then the third thing is we also provide recipes, which are templated workflows that can automate your people management and people experience in your company.
Cool, thank you. Thanks, Soo Ling. And Ben, beat that for a pitch.
Hi folks, I'm Ben Ford. I'm the founder of Mission Ctrl, and previous to that, one of the tech partners at the Pioneers. And the Pioneers is really where the genesis of Mission Ctrl came from. So what we do at Mission Ctrl is we build internal systems for scaling companies, because I came to the conclusion that many of the things that are getting in the way of people's development in companies and you know the speed at which companies develop is that we're just not on the same page, and part of that is the capacity of people to focus on what they need to do, and they spend too much time doing manual things that machines can do better. So we help them build the machines. So
with those two excellent introductions, I think it's safe to say we're in really good hands on the topic of HR tech strategy. Those of you that don't know, I'm a co-founder at the Pioneers. We don't build tech, but we do help companies build out their company culture, and when it comes to implementing and using tech in a way that makes people healthy, happy, and that sort of thing, that's where we get involved in projects. So where to begin on the topic of HR tech strategy? That's kind of my first question. If you're a growing business, small company, when should you start thinking about this issue of what your tech strategy is? I mean, put the letters HR in front of that if you like, but I think it becomes your operating systems strategy, really. When should you start thinking about that? Ben, I'll go to you first.
Well, I guess it comes back to what I mentioned before, right? It's capacity. It's when you have the capacity to think about it. So, you know, if you think of the stages of a company's formation and growth, the first early stage, however long that lasts, is really based on survival. So, you know, do you have something that is going to be a viable product or service, proving that out with early customers, and really it's all hands on deck at that point in my experience. So, you know, should you be thinking about big long-term strategy? Nice to keep it in mind, but certainly not the driving force of whatever you're doing day to day. Personally, I think it kind of comes in when you get past that point of initial survival and you want to start scaling out. Well, there's a step that you have to go through before you start scaling out, which is systemizing, and that's when I think you want to think about not just your HR tech strategy, but your general growth strategy. You know, when do you want to add people? When do you want to separate into teams? When do you want to put systems in place that ensure that the data that those teams are generating is centralized and you can use it for making good decisions? So I would say, you know, ballpark, probably around the 12 to 15 people headcount wise mark, unless you're growing really fast.
Okay. I've had one message that people have lost my video and sound. Ben, Soo Ling, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can see you and hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay, good. Jim, maybe that's just you. Sorry. I don't know how to help. maybe Ben or Soo Ling can. Yeah, so that 12, so you sort of put an employee size on it, maybe. Soo Ling, are there other signifiers that you think people should be looking out for that suggest, yeah, now's a good time to start thinking about your HR tech strategy?
I think it really depends on the company, and I guess it's like when, I guess your question is when should you, and there's another question like when do you have to, and I think as soon as, so you know, when it's just a like founder, an informal small startup, then it's fine. But I think as soon as you have the first employee, you kind of have to. But things that a lot of people, they postpone it. So I guess their strategy is to postpone it further. But they do have to, you know, once you need to do payroll and all that, you have to start thinking about it. A lot of people just postpone it and just pick whatever is convenient. But note that by doing so, you might be kind of hedging your bet. So you might have the risk of, like, you know, you choose the wrong thing at the start. It's good enough for the moment, and then suddenly, you know, when you're at like 12 people, whatever, like Ben mentioned, it starts to become like a problem when people, yeah, you can see that, you know, it's no longer suitable, whatever tag that you picked at the start. Yeah, and then
I guess that's another way of saying it's kind of never too soon to think strategically about these things. And if you're not thinking about the longer term stuff, just be aware that there are consequences.
It might come back and burn you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we had a bit of a conversation about some of those early decisions you're making around, do you choose Google as your operating world, or do you choose a Microsoft world? And you both had some interesting views on that, about what that might say about the kind of culture and the kind of company that you're going to be. Ben, do you want to share your reflections on that?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I think Soo Ling's point was actually probably better than mine. It's about what it says about you as a company. But there are companies that have grown up in like this new era of, you know, cloud enabled, let's say, distributed work, and Google's certainly one of those. Whereas Microsoft has the I don't know, cultural legacy, let's call it, of, you know, being a tech company that was founded in the 70s. You know, it was really there at the beginning of technology, and has had a very different outlook on how to build inclusivity. And, you know, I won't go into the whole kind of history of, you know, the sociological history of the tech industry. But, you know, to Soo Ling's earlier point, like choices made 40, 50 years ago still echo today. And, you know, Google wasn't around, but, you know, they're 20 years old. So, you know, all of your potential vendors of any type of system, let alone just your kind of basic email and document sharing, all have those kind of cultural legacies that reflect on their products to a degree. And I think Soo Ling's point about that we had in the prep for this, about what the choice says about you, is probably more interesting than
so Soo Ling,
abstract history of technology companies.
So Soo Ling, you choose Google, what does that say? You choose Microsoft, what does that say in your view?
I think every company, whether they are conscious or not, maybe it's from like what the founders' views are and things like that, there is a inherent culture that they want to build, or inherently how they work. And I think sometimes in choosing tech, okay, you may not have the choice. It depends on what's out there. But choosing the tech actually says a lot about what your culture is. So for example, yeah, if you're a startup and, you know, you choose the Microsoft platform, calendar, Microsoft Teams, yeah, don't want to sound mean, but it kind of says to your employees, like, you know, you kind of don't really mind if they suffer a bit. And yeah, and then so that's and it does. So every time these are like tools that people use every day. So like you may say that like if you're a company that you want people to have autonomy when they're doing things, and you want, you know, no hold up when they're using tech to do their work. But if you choose tech that is, you know, crashing all the time, lots of logins, lots of difficult things, yeah, it's always what the behavior is. So you're showing that you don't really care about your employees. Yeah, you know, it stops them from their flow, the tools that you ask them to use or you make them use. So it says a lot. Yeah. So.
Yeah, really interesting. So the other framing question then, before we get into the really juicy stuff, is around who's responsible for the HR tech strategy in a business. And I walked into our prep call assuming that sits with a people team. And I think that's an assumption on my part that perhaps isn't reflected in the market. So Ben, from your experience working with primarily rapidly growing tech businesses, who tends to own this strategy, and what's the consequence of where the strategy sits?
Well, I mean, in a lot of fast-growing tech companies, the strategy doesn't sit anywhere, because you hire, you get to that sort of, I don't know what, let's say 15 to 20 people. Like, I wrote an article quite a while back about social inflection points and how they kind of marry up with military unit sizes, which is actually how we first met, if you remember. It was how we first kind of got in contact. And I think what happens is at that first social inflection point of around 12 to 15 people, where you start to fragment out into, the social complexity of that group becomes such that you have to fragment out into different teams. And those teams often end up following the function of different parts of the business that need to be built out. So you'll have a finance team, marketing, product, ops, all of those are potential silos that form. And what I think often happens is expediency takes over, and whoever comes in as head of X to build out that function chooses what that function starts to use based on their previous experience. And, what I found often is that when you get to then say 50 people and you realize that actually, okay, great, now all of the operational folks have got what they need, the marketing folks have got HubSpot, and the product folks have got, I don't know, Segment or something. What you find is that at that point you've got all of the operational silos working quite well individually, but it's like, the arms of an octopus without the brain of the octopus, because the things that you need to make strategic decisions and drive the business forward then have to be aggregated from all these different systems. And that suggests to me that these systems and tools and services are chosen without an overriding grand vision or strategy, which actually I think is, the military concept of decentralized command is actually the right way to go. What you just need to do is add a little bit of overlay so that they don't just sort of disappear away from each other, but they're held together by some means. So I don't think there's anyone that owns the strategy. I think it probably should come down to one of the founders at that point to hold, whoever's taken the responsibility to develop the culture, the systems you use to build that culture upon are what the culture is.
Yeah.
So it's that person's responsibility.
So Soo Ling, maybe narrowing in on an element of systems then around how people teams might choose systems. So maybe it's the first time they're getting an HRIS or something, companies that sort of size. Would it typically be a people team that's making those choices in the experience that you've had? And how does that sit within a broader, in your experience, how does that sit within a broader tech strategy? And is that just a microcosm of the problem that Ben's identified, which is that everybody is making decisions in silos, and even within a people team, you're solving every individual people problem that you've come across with a particular system that you find to solve that problem?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think the thing is that it depends on the company. So like in a lot of tech companies, so if they are kind of advanced enough, well, I use the word advanced, but it's kind of like a sad word, if they're advanced enough to understand the importance of people, so if they have a people person, then generally the people person would kind of initiate the process of picking. The sad thing is, usually after that kind of selection, it goes down to the CTO or C-level, so the CEO to pick it. And I think sometimes that creates problems because whatever is good for the employees or the people of the company is different from, from the point of view of the CEO or the CTO, who sometimes, it depends again on the company, sometimes don't understand the people aspect and what consequences it will have. Yeah.
There's a different emphasis in the decisions that they're making.
Yeah, and the understanding, I think, the understanding of the people and the culture and the importance of that sometimes gets filtered out. So it's actually quite a sad thing that the decision is split up and then usually ends up with something that's suboptimal.
Yeah. Moving us to a less sad place then. So the world of HR and people tech has, and systems technology within businesses has dramatically changed. And we were putting just a 2-year frame on it. And I guess now it's possible, it's genuinely possible for most businesses to make a decision between when to buy technology off the shelf and when to build their own technology. And Ben, I know this is something you're really passionate about. And so maybe you can help just frame that as a decision that you might need to consider if you are thinking about your overall operating system strategy.
Yeah, so this is a really very, very interesting and quite nuanced point because, there's always been this kind of build versus buy question. There's a whole strategic decision-making framework called Wardley mapping that helps you contextualize that decision when you need to make it. And the very interesting thing about it is that the decision you might have made 5 years ago in exactly the same situation may well be a different decision because of that change of technology if you were making the same decision now, everything else being equal. So, 5 years ago, let's say 10 years ago, right, it would have been a no-brainer to just pick some HR system and suite of tools off the shelf. I don't know, let's say Zoho or something, right? Now, if what you need is a directory of your people, then this is probably a bit of a contrived example because you'd probably still want something that had some bells and whistles. But you might make a decision now which would be choose a smaller core system and build lots of integrations yourself, because there are things like Zapier and other low-code tools that allow you to integrate systems, or maybe choose something like merge.dev, which is a technical platform that aggregates data from many, many different HR systems. So you're making the same decision. We're going through 15 people, we need a system for X, and the decision you made 5 years ago is now completely different because your options are different. But the person who's making that decision probably last had to make that decision 5 years ago and might not realize that it's a different context, right? So there's all of these different overlapping dynamics, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I think what we're doing at Mission Ctrl is important, because people do make decisions that later turn out to be suboptimal, and they do have to integrate things that weren't designed for integration. And very often they don't have the people within the business that can actually do that, and they still need to do it. So it is quite easy to make decisions that kind of get you moving in the wrong direction without you even knowing it and having to unpick that later on.
Great. And Soo Ling, can you share maybe some of the other big changes that there's been in the technology world that have allowed companies to consider building their own stuff more now, or being a bit more niche in the things that they choose to buy? What are some of the big changes that we've
so there are a few. So I think one of it is recently there's a lot of low code or no code platforms coming out, enabling more and more people. So you don't need to be a developer to make a workflow that can automate something simple in the company that actually a lot of HR systems don't provide. Because a lot of off-the-shelf systems, they have an opinion about how your company should work, how people or the process should work, which doesn't fit anyone's actual process. But yeah, there you go. So when you want to customize it, you can build your own. And yeah, so that's one. And then also the kind of like, I guess people's awareness about data and also wanting to be able to control or export the data. Because I think like 5 years ago, you use a system, you kind of, yeah, they own all your data. There's no GDPR, they can do whatever. But nowadays people want access. And also, I think also the opening up of APIs. So I think again, 2 to 5 years ago, no one will evaluate a system by whether or not they provide API or for you, but now that's quite an important aspect. And with the existence of APIs, you can then integrate systems together, automate workflows, and the way you want it.
Yeah.
Could I just add one build on Soo Ling's point as well, though? The other thing that's happened over this time is that the systems that are available to run the operational portions of your business have fragmented and grown, right? So there are, where before you might have had a choice of 2 or 3 big things that do everything. Now you've probably got a choice between 50 things, and you would choose 5 or 6 of them that do different pieces because of that. The same dynamic of technology moving forward means that there are more and more people building things that address smaller and smaller niches. So as a business now, where you might have had exactly the same business 5 years ago that has 10 bits of software, now the optimal choice might be to have 50 bits of software to do exactly the same jobs. And now you've got, you don't have 40 more integrations to have. You actually have, I don't know, Soo Ling's the mathematician expert here, something, like 30 factorial more combinations, because it's not the number of systems you have, it's the number of connections between systems that you have that is where the complexity comes from.
Does that have an impact on this sort of, I guess in some way you're not making a clear decision between buy and build anymore, because you might be buying something and smaller building, that you have to build into your system, right?
Exactly.
There.
Exactly. Yeah.
And do you have any good hacks for people who might be in the buying market and let's park the build thing for the moment, but just staying on top of the proliferation of new technologies, new niche, not platforms, new niche apps for solving different things? Is it is it spreading by word of mouth? Are there good places to go that you can, if you're trying to solve a particular people problem? Either of you got any good hacks for people to get to what some of the best apps are out there and what to avoid?
So, I've got not really a hack, but an observation that might actually be a little bit uncomfortable to people in leadership positions. Increasingly, you're going to find that the young kid with no experience actually is the better one to make the decision than you. So you're going to have to increasingly balance that. The leadership is shifting between, I'm in charge, I make the decisions, which it might have been the case in the kind of more top-down hierarchical history, whereas now, as a tech person, like I stay on the cutting edge of tech. I like playing with tech. I write code. It's all good. But I think I would probably still want to defer to somebody who was playing around in the real cutting edge of open source or low code tools. And I would probably want to increasingly push the decision towards people that had more current knowledge, because they're the ones that are in contact with the change. Now that really, really messes with people's heads in leadership positions, especially in traditional companies where being in a leadership position is supposed to be where you are the one that makes all the decisions. It's like, well, if I'm not making the decisions, what am I here for? And increasingly, I think leadership is much more of a managing complexity and making trade-offs than, you know, the traditional view.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. And the things that I remember, so that's like maybe quite many years ago now, like in another company, I think the person who suggested Slack to use, that was like a long time, it was like a new employee. He just graduated, like, you know, very early 20s and very young, and it's like, use Slack. And the good thing was the, you know, C-level staff was like, 50 years old, was kind of like good enough to say, try it out, and it stuck. Whereas in a different situation, they'll be like, who are you? Why? No, what's this? Because that was, you know, when Slack was still really young. But then it worked so well. So what I think is that, leadership teams should defer to the younger people and try it out. It you know, just be brave, try it out. The thing with tech is, if it works for the people, it will stick. If it doesn't, you will see it immediately. People will just not use it. So why be so, you know, just try it out.
That was going to be my follow-up. That was going to be my follow-up question. Is that the evidence that you need for whether the decision is the right one is really
just
usage.
Try it out, and then you will immediately know. If your people hate the tech, they won't use it. There's no two sides to it. And if you find that you need to force people to do it, which sometimes, I know sometimes companies have to do that because there's like, that's the only software and that's what people are used to, but it just doesn't work. If software doesn't work for the people, it's not the right software. And so
do you think there are any exceptions to that?
I think there are. Yeah. So I mean, there are times when you have to prohibit certain things, right? There are times when the leadership turn around and say, no, we can't do that because X, Y, and Z is the right thing. I mean, I think in the vast majority of cases, it will be an ego-led thing, an ego-led, you know, clash of personalities where it isn't the right choice. But there will be cases where, you know, oh, we're a financial company, we cannot use this because it doesn't do X,
we are
Y,
a security company because this new product built by a bunch of kids is not up to that level of security. Then that would be the decision. But then again, so I think the only thing that the leadership team should have is to really understand the culture and the direction of the company, and that should be the only reason something is not used, rather than we have always operated this way, we have always used this tool. And the things that, because things are changing more and more rapidly now, so I feel like it's, so in the past there has been this kind of how to say, work type rule where if you hire a people person, they might come with their suite of tools that they are used to using. And I don't even think that's a good idea anymore, because things change so fast. So that, you know, they will be used to whatever their company that they are using at their company, which has been decided like 10 years ago. So it's like 15 years out of date. So that would be not a good practice anymore. Just see what's out there right now and see if it fits your culture and where you want to go as a company, and then decide based on that and let people try it out.
And there's another really interesting dynamic of that, is that, you know, you're increasingly needing to pick people for their attitude rather than their experience.
Developers too, and now everyone, because things change so fast. You need adaptable.
I don't need to ask any questions. I'll just let you two talk. My next question was around skill set. And if you're no longer looking for, I'm going to hire a director of people or a head of people or something who's implemented this tech before, and that's, that's what I think is going to make a difference in my business. We're saying that's not a good idea because it, firstly, it's going to be out of date.
They
probably going to be
do that for really
business.
old arcade organizations. Like I think in universities or in like government institutions, that's what they would choose based on, but definitely not startups and companies.
So that sort of past experience of having done something, particularly where it relates to a specific tech, is not useful in this rapidly changing world. So what is useful? And we talked about the aptitude, but I think there's also something about these tech coding skills within a people team setting that is quite new. Ben, I know you've got some views on that.
Yeah, so I will just say that, you know, experience is important, but I think increasingly experience has to be paired with humility to know where you need to leave parts of your experience at the door and replace it with new experience. That can be quite difficult. And yeah, in the question of coding, I mean, I taught myself to code. Luckily had some time on board a ship in the distant past where I had lots of time to myself and nothing else to do, so I taught myself Python. And I think, yeah, increasingly, you know, the sort of second and third order effects of choosing more and more smaller tools is that the thing that really defines your company, your culture, your business is going to be something in the middle that integrates all of those together. Now, you know, in the history of companies, you know, that would have been, you know, a water cooler where the culture was built, and, you know, maybe, you know, a bunch of stuff in a filing cabinet that was your general ledger. And there's a great book called The Great Game of Business, which talks about the process of going through this for a very, you know, non-tech. It was an engine reconditioning factory 40 years ago. And it's a fantastic book because it really talks about how people collaborate, and it's completely tech agnostic. But the issue is that, you know, you're choosing more and more smaller and smaller tools. You need to integrate those together. So either you have to have the capability within a company to do that, or, you know, you can come and talk to me and I can help you do that. But ideally, you want somebody that can do the small things, like, you know, what Soo Ling said earlier, like automate a workflow, or, you know, template an email, or it doesn't have to be massively complicated to be a real time saver. And the more those skills are present across the business, the more opportunity you have to do that and to kind of build it yourself and scratch your own itch.
And Soo Ling, in your view, so firstly, do you agree? And if you do, how do you think businesses can go about developing those sorts of skills in them? Yeah, within them.
So I think, yeah, I do agree. Yeah, this is where the direction of where everything's going, just smaller bits and bits that are more focused, that do what you need, rather than big platforms that do everything you don't need, some things you need, and lots of other things. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, it depends on the company, although I feel like generally, if it's a tech company, then you get developers who can do that. Although, usually developers like to, then let's say that usually, again, I say typically, a typical developer would prefer to develop software that is kind of like functional for the company. Like, as in, you know, if they are a finance company, they want to build the finance software. So they would be less keen to build like some tool to help a HR person, or to, you know, to help employee experience. So then it becomes, when is a company big enough to hire a specific developer that can do that? And I think that's, you know, 50, 100 people, and again, depending on the company. So I think that's why there's so much like low code, no code platforms at the moment, because they realize that then you can, you know, empower the people team who really understands the problem to do it themselves with a bit of help from developers if they can, but otherwise they can just do that. So that would be the most ideal situation. Yeah, because they would know what to build. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a course a couple of years ago with a company who, as part of their onboarding process, every single person that joined that company, and they, you know, they were a tech company, they were a remote, you know, very modern thinking tech company. They had a CTO, they had a tech team. You know, they weren't like Luddites or not tech enabled, but every single person that joined that company got a course on, I think, 3 or 4 low code tools.
That's fantastic. So yeah, that's a great company.
For the basic stuff, yeah. So for the basic stuff, you know, they could have, I think they use Airtable, Zapier, and something else, right? So these are, you know, commodity low code tools pay a subscription to them, and you can do things like automate simple workflows and gather data. And even the very technical people in that business that understand the trade-offs know that when you use those tools, observability goes down, reliability is somebody else's issue, therefore you're on the hook. You're at the whim of another company. It's far more messy to develop systems in these things. They cost a lot more to run because you pay for each usage. But even at the very technical levels in that company, they recognized that there were parts of that business that moved quickly enough that none of that mattered. The thing that mattered was the speed of response, and those tools were the best for the job for the speed of response.
Yeah, and I think it also shows that they value people's time, which actually will be more expensive than any of these tools, however they charge, which is why they can charge the amount. But yeah,
100%.
Yeah. So it sort of brings me on to the next juicy topic, which is we've got lots of amazing technology out there. We've got increasingly specialized apps to do different functions that you might want to do in a business. It can be easy, and I was chatting to a client very recently about how you can get bowled over by what's possible with the technology and actually end up being led by what's possible in terms of what you build than being led by something that's culture. How do you avoid that problem? So carried away with the technology versus building what your company actually needs to create the culture that you want.
I think you have to start with what you want, because if you don't know what you want and what you need, you're going to kind of get distracted with all the nice bells and whistles and cool things that you don't need, that the companies are trying to tell you do. So the most important thing before you go out looking for any software, not just even HR software, any software, is to know what need you have, what do you want to solve by looking for this tool.
Yeah. Ben, would you add to that?
I would add to that, and I would also, I'll tell a little, that's not really a story, it's a historical example. I would say in addition to that, like, know what you want for the critical path, but increasingly set aside more capacity for experimentation, because it's experimentation where you find all the optionality that probably a lot of your future growth will come from. For example, 3M, an experiment led to the Post-it note. It was an experiment on a type of glue that didn't work, that they figured out how to make something else with. And the example that I want to give is a subject close to my heart. It's the formation of the Commandos in the Second World War. So the Special Operations Executive was this kind of branch of absolute lunatics that the War Office was continually trying to stop, and Churchill himself had to provide them an umbrella, because they just had these lunatics in a place together somewhere inventing stuff. They had a caravan engineer and and out of that came the limpet mine and a bunch of stuff that they had no idea how and when they were going to use, but they thought it was cool, so they developed it. And and when D-Day came, one of the things that arguably saved and changed the outcome of the war was that they had some of these lunatics that had been trained by these other lunatics who had socks full of grease with sand in it that they rubbed on the train's axles, and that stopped the Germans coming back up through France with their tanks. So there is this balance of, and I think it's shifting somewhat between know what you want, set the direction from the top down, and then very diligently follow that direction. At the same time, there's this kind of, you have to leave some of your capacity open to play with these new things, because the thing that might just be of 50 experiments that you run, 49 might fail, and one might be the thing that completely transforms how you work and the outcome of your company. So I think leaving more space for optionality when there's lots and lots of new things going on, I think is really, really important.
That's complete. So true. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, so be absolutely clear on what's the kind of culture you're trying to build, and what's the the minimum path that you need from technology to kind of move you forward in that direction, and then what's the space and the capacity that you've got around that to experiment with different paths forward. Yeah, really, really good advice. Are there signs that you could look out for? So when you've made a choice, to maybe buy a particular system or implement something, that it's actually not moving your culture in the direction that you would like, which is slightly different, I think, to just whether it's being used or not, because you might get a piece of technology that's actually being really well used, but not in a way that you envisaged, or not in a way that you think is necessarily adding something positive to your business. So do you have any experience of that, and what maybe people should look out for whilst they're experimenting or after they've implemented something, to sense check whether this is actually making a positive contribution to their business?
So I think one thing is you have to ask. So unless something is absolutely horrible, people won't. So your people might just either not use it, they wouldn't like complain. So there's very few instances. So you have to ask people, and you have to really want to know, not like just ask because that's the quarterly surveys. That wouldn't work. So you have to ask because you care about whether or not the tool helps them in their work. And then, then you would learn. So that's the best way, because then you will understand little nuances. And then the other thing is to observe behavior, like how people use the thing. Yeah. So that would really help.
Yeah. Two really good points, Ben.
Yeah. And it definitely helps if you've kept your options open.
Yes.
If you've signed a 2-year contract with something, because I was talking to somebody the other day who worked in another modern tech company, and they use a tool called Retool internally, which is a brilliant piece of kit. Bloody expensive because it's priced per head, and it's aimed squarely at growing tech companies who, as Soo Ling said, the cost that you save on people's time is worth, in their case, dropping 50 grand a year on this thing. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Have you ever come across this other tool, which is called AppSmith, which is open source and you can run yourself and won't cost you anything? He was like, oh, I wish I'd had that conversation 2 weeks ago. So, and that is not to say that Retool is a bad tool. Retool is a very good tool. But again, the nature of technology progress is such that somebody noticed that Retool was a good tool, and they built their own version that was priced differently. And
in any case, like never sign any kind of long-term or any type of that kind of contract, because this in the current state of technology and even the current state of world, everything changes so quickly. So you don't want to be locked in. Yeah.
So going to a really positive place from this then, when you get this right, so when you're doing a good job of identifying some of the best apps in the market, because you're listening to the younger people in your business who are closer to both the issues that they've got at work, but also what the potential solutions are there. When you've got the right capabilities in your team to be building that into a broader ecosystem, what's the benefit of getting this right? What does that allow for your, at a high level, what does it allow your people to do that they might otherwise not be able to do? What does it feel like to work in a company that gets this right?
I think it's unlimited benefit, because one of the things that the people will feel empowered, so it will help them, for sure it helps them work much better. But for the person who suggested the tool and then see it being used, and then so their connection to the company, and they understand that their views are heard and that they make some good effect, not just for themselves but their colleagues, and if they can see everyone working better together. So I think there's so much benefit.
And I guess throwing it to you, Ben, as well, I'm sort of looking for, if somebody's listening to this conversation and so I agree with all of that, Soo Ling, by the way, but if somebody's listening to this conversation and they're looking for the list of benefits that they might need to take to their lead team for why they should be some attention and focus on what they're doing in the at the very least their HR tech space, but generally the operating system space, what's the benefits and the headlines that convinces a lead team that, yeah, they should give you some time to focus on this?
Survival. I mean, you know, that's a flippant answer, but I think it is true that companies that don't keep up to date with their systems, you know, you can have a company that, I don't know, let me think of an example. Yeah, I mean, some of these kind of, you know, online creator companies, you know, 1 or 2 people, massive margins, all held together by low code systems, and, you know, a tiny team of, you know, either the single entrepreneur or a tiny team, and that tiny team is doing the work that a company 3 or 4 times bigger might be doing, right? And that is not a, you know, if you're in a competitive market and you're competing with a company that is doing this better than you, and you know, that could be, I don't know, an incumbent bank versus a new bank, or you know, even someone that started a company a few years ago and, you know, was really onto something, and now there's a load of competitors. Every competitor that you have starts with you as an example and probably a better tech landscape to start from, right? So, you know, exponentially so if you're not constantly keeping on top of this, if you're not constantly in, you know, focusing on making your company a good place to work, taking everything from the environment that gives you that competitive advantage in terms of hiring people in different parts of the world and building these systems, eventually a competitor will come along that is. And, you know, if you're in a hyper competitive market, that is the difference between surviving and not surviving sometimes.
Yeah. And then if you consistently fail your people in terms of the tools you give them to do their work, they'll just leave and join the competitor who is.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's really important. Last topic of conversation then, to go into the last 10 minutes and start thinking about in your own minds. The last question I'm going to be asking is just that one piece of advice that you'd leave people with. But last topic, I just want to talk about the product mindset. So we know this is important. If it's your role to be thinking about HR tech strategy, how important is having a product mindset to owning the HR tech strategy? That's the question. How important is that product mindset? Soo Ling. Cool.
Yeah. So
Ben. Sorry, I totally messed up there. Ben.
So I think it depends what you mean by product mindset. So for me, a product mindset is continually looking for signals from your environment that you're on the right track, making lots and lots of small bets. There's a great book about the way Basecamp organizes their work called Shape Up, which is really about making continual small bets and kind of building iterative kind of internal structure. And that for me is what when people say product mindset, that's what I think. I think very often product mindset is construed as, you know, having a very strong roadmap and, you know, planning things out in advance and things like that. And that to me is, you know, you want to be led by your people, what they need, what they are struggling with, and you want to be very attentive to that, and you want to build, you know, you want to obviously prioritize those things, but that's what you want to be led with. So yes, in that sense, I think a product mindset is extremely important, and not to have any preconceptions and to allow experience and what you uncover to teach you what to do next.
Cool. And so how helpful is having a backlog in that context? It sounds like maybe not so much. Soo Ling, I'll throw that one to you then. How should you have a product backlog?
So I think as a company who is not building the HR tech, what you need to have is to understand. So especially if it's not a tech company, they're like, so they wouldn't understand like a backlog and stuff. I think that might be over-engineered, again, depending on the company and the stage. But understanding what is currently needed, and also to be open to, and also understanding what's needed now and what's needed for the near future, but not to get something that's way too big for your current stage, thinking you're gonna get there soon. So that's a bad way to do it. Yeah. So again,
yeah. So always buying for the right size.
Yeah.
Rather than the t-shirt size 3 sizes too big. And this issue of identifying when you need to get something new versus when you can adapt something you've already got. Yeah. How easy is it to identify
I think
that?
I think that's like a very kind of tricky human psychology thing. So people always hold on to what they have longer than they should. So yeah, and with technology, that's even worse because you have a lot of kind of like baggage. You're used to it. Lots of systems are integrated with it. So usually when you feel that you've probably hung on to something for too long, it's like way too long. Yeah,
Okay.
like 3 times too long.
That's a good guide.
Yeah.
Ben, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd agree to that, and I'd also say that one of the ways to mitigate that is to do more of the building yourself internally, because if you've built it yourself, you can change it yourself. You know, I live in a house. I'm not very good at DIY. I have somebody I call to come and do stuff. My brother's a builder, and he built his own extension. And I'm pretty sure if something goes wrong in his plumbing, he can just like dive under the sink and fix it himself. So, you know, there's much less of those niggles that he would have to live with than compared to me.
Yeah.
And likewise, if you have, I remember working for a really quite progressive agency, but the trouble that the timesheet system they used, I first used 10 years ago in some telecoms company, and oh my god, it was the worst piece of crap you've ever seen. It was awful. People dreaded timesheet time, and they had left it, well, infinity too long because they shouldn't have picked it in the first place. But you know, that's an example of a thing that bleeds into everything, because you know the people that had to use it hated it, so they put it off to the last minute. The operations team that had to use the data from it didn't serve them at all. So you had 3 or 4 people doing the job of, you know, what could have been one person's job if it was a decent system, and it was impossible to integrate with. So it was just this big, you know, boil on the face of the company, really, and it was, you know, really, really unpleasant. So yeah, the more you build yourself, the more you've got control over your own destiny.
Again, also this also adds another extra point. So when you choose a product, another important question is how easy is it for us to switch to another product, either at the same stage or later when we grow. Yeah. So if it's a seriously horrible lock-in, then yeah, that's not going to be good, especially nowadays. Yeah.
And I guess that's also connected to my last sort of question, which is around legacy systems and the importance of keeping a good clean house, I suppose. And again, this is something we touched on in the prep call, but how proactive should you be in actually fully switching or ridding yourself of stuff that's not used very much, or maybe by only 1 or 2 people in the business? Yeah, how important is that maintenance and cleaning?
I think
process?
very, and I think this is one of the aspects. This is one of the reasons why people like SaaS, because like software as a subscription, because a lot of users, they just forget that they are subscribing to something and then they don't use it and they continue. So investors like that a lot. But as a company, I think it's very important to vigilantly check that, because you don't want to be wasting money on software that no one's used. Yeah, I've worked in a company where we found that there's a software that's costing 20K a month, and the employee who subscribed to it had left like 5 years ago, and the company's still paying for it. I mean, that's quite a big amount, but it all adds up. Yeah. Again, depends on the size of the company, but we shouldn't waste. But so that's it's very important.
I guess it may have less of an impact on your user experience, but it does impact your bottom line. Like you could actually find pots of money around the place that you could be investing in experimenting with new technology that does influence your user experience.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, we're going to go into wrap up. So one, let me just put up before people are leaving us. Hang on, we've got some speaker details. So if people do want to get in touch with Soo Ling and Ben, here are the details, and myself, I'm on there too. But we'll leave that there just for your final pieces of advice. So if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who's just taken responsibility for people tech in a 50-person business, what would it be? So I'm starting, and this is specifically the people tech, 50 people, one piece of advice. What would your advice be, Soo Ling?
I think understand the culture of the company. What do they want to be, and select the tech based on that. So that's very important. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Ben?
My advice would be go and overturn all the rocks. Before you make any big decisions, go and ask people what their experience has been, what's bugging them, what's getting on their nerves. Do not go in there with any preconceived notions. You turn over all the rocks, you'll probably have the next 6 months of work mapped out for you, and it will be mapped out in a way that makes people happy rather than makes people sad.
Yeah. And we all like making people happy at work. I think that is one thing that we can say that unites certainly the three of us, and hopefully the people on this who are listening too. Ben, Soo Ling, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you everybody for listening live, and those of you that are watching us on record, I hope you've enjoyed being a fly on the wall in our offices, living rooms, my dining room. And until the next time, and I will just put the end side up. But thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lee. It was really good.